Remember spending hours battling alien invaders in Galaga or leaping over barrels in Donkey Kong. Those skills you honed might have been more valuable than anyone realized. In the next few minutes, we're going to blow your mind with stories of 80s arcade kids who turned their gaming obsessions into million-dollar careers. Remember those neon-lit rooms filled with the cacophony of beeps, bloops, and digital explosions? Let's take a trip down memory lane to the golden age of arcades, where our allowances disappeared faster than Pac-Man gobbling dots. Picture yourself in 1980, standing in front of a gleaming Pac-Man cabinet. Your pockets jingle with a week's worth of quarters, each one a precious token of gaming potential. The joystick beckons, promising endless hours of maze-running excitement. But here's something you might not know. While we were busy chasing high scores, some cities were trying to pull the plug on our pixelated paradise. That's right, back in the early 80s, places like Marshfield, Massachusetts actually banned arcade games. Can you believe it? They thought these addictive machines were corrupting the youth and causing all sorts of trouble. But for most of us, arcades were our second home. We'd spend entire weekends camped out in front of our favorite games, emerging only for snacks or to beg mom for more quarters. Remember saving up your lunch money all week just to blow it all on Saturday afternoon? You weren't alone. Pac-Man alone gobbled up more than just ghosts. It chomped through over $1 billion in quarters by 1981. That's nearly 10 billion games played. Talk about pocket change adding up. But were these games really just time wasters, like our parents claimed? Well, hold on to your joysticks, because we're about to flip that idea upside down. Those quarters we wasted weren't just feeding our gaming addictions. They were fueling a technological revolution. Every time we popped a quarter into Donkey Kong or Galaga, we were actually investing in the future of computing. These games pushed the boundaries of what was possible with graphics and sound. They inspired a generation of programmers and engineers who would go on to shape the digital world we live in today. So, the next time someone tells you that you wasted your youth in arcades, you can proudly say you were on the cutting edge of a tech revolution. Those flashing lights and electronic sounds weren't just entertainment. They were the building blocks of our modern digital world. Remember when we thought Pac-Man was just about chomping dots and avoiding ghosts? Well, hold on to your joysticks, because those simple games were secretly building empires right under our noses. Let's rewind to 1978 when Space Invaders landed in arcades. This alien-blasting sensation wasn't just eating quarters, it was laying the groundwork for an entire industry. But here's the kicker. Not everyone saw the potential. Can you believe some big-shot executives actually turned down the chance to distribute Space Invaders in the US? Talk about missing the mothership. Now, picture yourself in 1981, standing in front of a Donkey Kong machine for the first time. Little did we know, we were witnessing the birth of an icon. That little mustached guy in overalls? Yep, that was Mario's debut. Who could have guessed that this barrel-jumping handyman would become the face of the most successful video game franchise in history? But it wasn't just Mario. The 80s arcade scene was a breeding ground for characters we still love today. Pac-Man, Frogger, Q*bert. These pixelated pals weren't just game characters. They were the foundations of multi-billion-dollar empires. And get this, the skills we picked up mashing buttons and twisting joysticks, they were shaping the future in ways we never imagined. Think about it. Those problem-solving skills you developed trying to clear Tetris levels, the quick reflexes you honed dodging ghosts in Pac-Man, they weren't just wasting time like our parents thought. These games were training a generation of tech-savvy innovators who would go on to shape our digital world. Want to know something mind-blowing? Some of today's tech giants can trace their roots back to those noisy, neon-lit arcades. The founders of companies that now dominate our daily lives cut their teeth on Galaga and Frogger. These silly games weren't just entertainment, they were incubators for future billionaires. Take Pac-Man's creator, Toru Iwatani, for example. This guy didn't just make a game, he revolutionized game design. Pac-Man's cute characters and non-violent gameplay opened up gaming to a whole new audience. Iwatani's creation inspired countless developers and showed the world that video games could be more than just shoot-'em-ups. But here's the real kicker. It wasn't just the game creators who struck gold. Remember those kids who could play Defender for hours on a single quarter? The ones who always had the top scores on the arcade leaderboards? Well, they grew up too, and some of them turned their gaming passion into seriously impressive careers. Want to know how? Stick around, because we're about to level up and see how players turned their arcade skills into cold, hard cash. Remember those kids who seemed to have a permanent spot at the arcade's most popular games? The ones who could clear level after level without breaking a sweat? Well, those wasted hours in front of glowing screens turned out to be anything but a waste. Let's take a trip down memory lane and see how those high scores transformed into high-flying careers. Picture this. It's 1982, and arcades across America are buzzing with energy. Kids are huddled around machines, cheering on their friends as they try to beat the latest high score. These weren't just games, they were the birthplace of a whole new culture. Tournaments started popping up, offering prizes that had kids practicing for hours on end. Who would have thought that those intense competitions were actually preparing a generation for the digital age? Now, we all remember how our parents would nag us to stop playing and do something productive. They were convinced these games were rotting our brains and leading us nowhere. Oh, how wrong they were. It turns out those countless hours of button mashing and joystick juggling were actually building some seriously valuable skills. Take Walter Day, for example. He founded Twin Galaxies, the official record keeper for video game high scores. His passion for gaming led him to create a whole industry around competitive play. And he's not alone. Many of those arcade whizzes grew up to become the tech titans and game designers shaping our digital world today. But it's not just about becoming the next big game developer. The skills we picked up in those dimly lit arcades translated into real-world success in ways we never expected. That lightning-fast hand-eye coordination from Defender, perfect for surgeons and pilots. The problem-solving skills honed in Tetris, ideal for coders and engineers. And don't even get us started on how games like Pac-Man taught us resource management and strategic thinking. Speaking of Defender, did you know it was so addictive that some towns nearly banned it? This space shooter had players protecting astronauts from waves of aliens, and its complex controls made it a true test of skill. It was the game that separated the casual players from the true arcade masters. But Defender was more than just a challenging game. It was a proving ground for future tech innovators. The intense focus and quick decision-making required to master Defender's controls were the same skills that would later drive success in Silicon Valley boardrooms and startup garages. As we wrap up this high-scoring trip through memory lane, it's clear that those wasted quarters were actually an investment in our future. Who knew that chasing pixelated ghosts and shooting down space invaders would lead to real-world victories? But hold on to your joysticks, because we're about to power up to the next level. Ever wonder why these games were so addictive in the first place? Get ready, because we're about to dive into the fascinating psychology behind that just one more game feeling. What if we told you that those flashing lights and catchy tunes weren't just for fun? The game designers of the 80s had a secret weapon up their sleeves, and it wasn't just colorful pixels. They were tapping into the very core of our brains, using psychology to keep us coming back for more. Ready to uncover the sneaky science that kept you feeding quarters into those machines? Back in the day, arcade game designers weren't just creating games, they were crafting experiences that hooked us like nothing else. Take Tetris, for example. This seemingly simple game of falling blocks was actually a masterclass in brain manipulation. Every time you cleared a line, your brain got a little hit of dopamine, the feel-good chemical that keeps us wanting more. It's no wonder we couldn't stop playing. But were these game designers really manipulating us? Well, yes and no. While they certainly used psychological tricks to keep us engaged, they also stumbled upon something incredible. These games weren't just entertaining us. They were actually training our brains in ways we never expected. Think about it. Remember the rush you felt when you finally beat your high score? That wasn't just excitement. It was your brain forming new neural pathways, strengthening your problem-solving skills and hand-eye coordination. Every game of Pac-Man or Space Invaders was like a workout for your mind, improving your ability to make quick decisions and think strategically. Psychologists studying the impact of these games on developing minds found some surprising results. Far from rotting our brains, as our parents feared, arcade games were actually enhancing cognitive functions, spatial awareness, pattern recognition, and even social skills. Remember trading tips with friends at the arcade? All got a boost from our gaming habits. But here's where it gets really interesting. Those useless skills we picked up dodging ghosts and shooting aliens, they turned out to be anything but useless in the real world. The problem-solving abilities we honed in the arcade translated directly into valuable skills for the emerging digital age. Who knew that all those hours spent trying to beat Defender were actually preparing us for careers in technology, engineering, and beyond? So the next time someone tells you video games are a waste of time, you can smile knowingly. Those pixelated wonders of the 80s weren't just games. They were the training grounds for a generation of innovators and problem solvers. As we wrap up our journey through the golden age of arcades, let's take a moment to appreciate the lasting legacy of these electronic marvels. What other useless activities today might be shaping the world of tomorrow?